Well, let's just start with our cute little ducky because I don't think both will fit at the same time. Okay, ready, set, and hi everyone. Today we are working on the last dinner in September. This is week 39. If this is your first time joining us, welcome. My name is Ashley. I'm a registered dietitian and I also have an antique business. I'm combining those two things to bring you this project. Among all the other things that I collect vintage cookbooks. And a little while ago, I was at an antique shop near Pittsburgh and I found a collection of these really cool cookbooks from Women's World from the 1920s. That includes this 52 Sunday Dinners book. Looking through the format of the recipes, I knew it was a challenge I wanted to take on, and I thought it was just too cool to not bring you along with me because I was so excited and did not want to wait until January to start. We started in August with week 31. So if you haven't gone back and watched all of those videos and you're a little bit confused about why weeks 1 through 30 are missing, that's why. We're going to work the rest of the way through 2023, circling back through 2024, where we start at the first Sunday dinner, the first week of January in the new year. This week, we're going to be making fresh corn soup, chicken croquettes. We're going to skip over the mashed potatoes because we've already made those, and we're going with mashed white turnips. We're also skipping the sweet pickled pears because I did not have time to make those and let them sit for several weeks. We're going to do the date muffins, tomato salad with cucumber dressing, chocolate walnut pudding. As someone suggested and requested a little bit ago, I will be sipping the coffee today. If you've seen previous episodes, you know that typically we get everything prepped the day before, and then we finish up and try all of the recipes the next day. So today we're going to be prepping the pudding, the dressing, the chicken croquettes, the muffins, and we also, I think, are going to make the stock for the corn soup tomorrow. And then I guess let's see what else we get into. Let's get our aprons on and get going. I have these cute little molds that I'm going to be using for this pudding, and these ones are more of the antique type of copper molds, and this is just a cute little ducky. I think he might be a mold. I've used him as a cookie cutter in I think the second video when we made that. My sister made her redemption pie, but he is flat on the sides, so I think that he's meant to be a mold because he should sit upside down like this. So this is what we're going to use, and the recipe does not call for them to be buttered. It says to rinse them with ice water. However, as many of you have pointed out in the comments, a lot of the, I guess, things that are left out of this recipe or these recipes are things that are assumed. So I don't know if it would be assumed that we would butter these or not. So we're gonna do half and half. I'll butter half of them, I won't butter the other half, and we'll see which turns out better. This soup recipe calls for the chicken stock to be made, and if you watched any of the previous episodes with chicken in them, I have saved the carcasses of those chickens and some of the leftover scraps from some of those vegetables. So instead of making just the 2 quarts, what this recipe is calling for this stock, we're going to make double, triple, maybe even quadruple the amount. I'm going to dig out all of the bones and carcasses, that I have in my freezer, and we're gonna go ahead and just make this all now at once. And then the leftovers, what I'll probably do is just freeze them or can them. That way we have it available for the next time it calls for chicken stock. Many of you pointed out in the comments that you wanted me to get one of these sifters, which I already had. I just had it packed away. So I dug it out so that everybody can see this type of sifting instead. We're going to start our date muffins now. Even with this sifter, it still kind of looks in here like I am on fire. Looking at this batter right before I am going to add the dates here, it looks to me more like a dough than it does a batter. And some of you may be looking at this and getting ready to think or say, well, you didn't add enough milk, or you added too much flour, or whatever the thing that is wrong with this recipe that I did. However, I want you to keep in mind as you are watching this and as you're seeing some of these things turn out, I am trying to follow these recipes exactly as they are written. Now, there are some things that would have been assumed, as you may, I guess, have seen in some of these other recipes. I certainly am kind of messing up a lot of this stuff and learning along the way, but some of these recipes as they are written maybe weren't written correctly, or maybe weren't tested out ahead of time. This texture might be exactly what it's supposed to be. Maybe this is how thick a muffin texture, a muffin batter texture is supposed to be for this particular batter dough here. But I'm guessing that it's supposed to be a little bit more pourable than it is shapeable. We're going to go with this. We're going to see how it turns out as the recipe is written. And if you want to leave some tips down below in the comments about what they could have done to improve upon this recipe, that's wonderful. If you have memories of your parents, grandparents making some of these date muffins, I would love to hear about them. But just keep in mind, this is how the recipe was written. I don't have an iron muffin tin. I have aluminum muffin tins, and I have a cast iron. I actually don't know what this pan is called. Several years ago, my friend Lou Budnick had us over for dinner, and he made this incredible donut type dish. I don't actually know what it was called. I have the recipe somewhere. I begged him for his recipe because he was the best cook I think I've ever met in my entire life. But he used this pan to make those donuts. And so I purchased one in hopes that I would make that one day. I haven't done it yet. Maybe we'll do that as a supplemental video at some point. We will honor Lou by using this pan and his recipe. And I can tell you for sure they definitely won't turn out as well as his, but back to the point here. We are going to use both of these, put a little bit of this batter or dough, whatever we're calling this. We're going to put it in both and see which one turns out the best. Let's see if we can hear the sizzle when we put them in this iron one. I'm not sure about you, but I can unquestionably hear these cooking already. Definitely overfilled that one, but that's okay. We're just kind of working through this here. This batter is a little bit thick to be able for me to easily determine how much is going to be within a 1/2 inch. So we're gonna do the best we can here. And hopefully these turn out well. Let's see how our muffins turned out. We're gonna go with the aluminum tin first, then we'll try the cast iron one. We're gonna go with this one. Okay. They smell really nice. They look really pretty. You can definitely see the dates all the way through them. Let's let you see them broken open. Steaming very nicely. This does not strike me as a muffin at all. This is a biscuit. Unquestionably, the texture, the flavor, this is a biscuit with dates, and it's amazing. Obviously, I have to try it with butter, and check out how cute my little butter spreader is. It's a little asparagus bunch. Isn't that adorable? All right, let's get that butter on. When they wrote this recipe, I don't know if the intention was to make them like biscuits, but that's definitely how they turned out, and it's really, really, really good. Now that was in the aluminum. Let's try it in the cast iron. Let's go with the middle one. Oh boy. Although I did put the lard in there to melt, I have not, previous to that, I had not seasoned this cast iron all that well. So these are sticking a little bit. I need to take some time and effort to season this pan a little bit before I decide to use it again. Okay, so it is definitely darker on the bottom. Take a look at that. Let's get it broken up for you. This pains me to say it a little bit, and although I am recording it, if I weren't recording this, I would deny I ever said it. But I think I prefer the biscuits in the aluminum over the ones in the cast iron. There's not a big difference, but the ones in the cast iron are almost maybe a little bit harder, a little bit drier, not by much. There's not a huge difference. If I just tasted these, I would think they were amazing. But if I am asked to compare which one is better, I'd actually go with the aluminum. Look at the color of this stock. Isn't it beautiful? The last thing I'm going to prep this evening is getting the corn off of the cob. It doesn't say that the corn should be cooked, and the corn is going to cook in the soup. So I think my assumption is that I am supposed to get it off the cob before it's cooked. I could be wrong here, but that's what we're gonna go with, and I anticipate that this soup, regardless, will be amazing. It's dinner day and we are actually in really good shape. We got a lot of our stuff done yesterday. Today, all we have left to do are the turnips, the soup. We need to finish up those chicken croquettes, and we have to get the salad put together, and then we're all done. And speaking of that salad, I know in previous videos I have mentioned that I have kind of a brown thumb and I have not made time for a garden this year, and actually in a few years. But what I did do is purchase a vertical garden, and I planted tomatoes in it this year. So for this tomato salad, we're gonna go ahead outside, we're gonna harvest a couple of those tomatoes, and we're gonna use them in today's dinner. Okay, so I did warn you before, I have a brown thumb. These poor tomatoes. I actually don't think we're going to be harvesting any of them. For some reason, all of them seem to get this little black stuff or brown stuff on the bottom. I have no idea what that comes from, and it is certainly not the fault of this planter here. This thing is fabulous, and our parents live right over the hill. They have 2 of these, and their garden is beautiful. And in fact, we actually ended up getting tomatoes from their garden instead. But I wanted to ask, because a lot of you seem to be so knowledgeable, what is this and how do I fix it for next year? There's other things I did definitely wrong here that started with starting these seeds. So I'm sure maybe this goes back to that. But if you guys plant tomatoes and know what in the world that is, it's hard. It's not like it's soft and rotted. It's pretty hard there. How do I fix that? The other reason that I have this planter is that I love the smell of tomato vines and leaves. Is there anything better than that smell? This recipe calls for peeled cucumbers. And it doesn't say, it just says 1 cup. It doesn't say whether they should be sliced, chopped. My assumption, or what I picture, I think with this, initially I thought sliced cucumbers to go with the tomatoes. But as I read it and saw that it was a cucumber dressing, I pictured it more with these cucumbers that were a little more chopped, maybe into small chunks, maybe not finely minced, because it has to be soaked. And it would be very difficult to separate that from the water. So I think I'm going to do kind of small chops, and that's how we're going to make this dressing. And we'll just kind of see how that turns out. I am a tiny bit sorry for misleading you into thinking maybe I had some gardening skills and we were going to use my tomatoes, but what I lack in gardening skills, our parents make up for. So we have generously received some beautiful homegrown tomatoes, and we're going to use these for our salad. You know, when I eat a salad with tomatoes, I like my skin still on. I can't say that in my lifetime I have ever peeled a tomato to eat as a salad. Maybe for some canning recipes or to make a sauce or something, but never to eat on a salad. How about you guys? As we work through these menus each week and I prepare ahead of time looking at each of these menus, something that I notice is very different between this cookbook 100 years ago and modern cookbooks is that sometimes the recipe isn't listed in that menu at all. And that would probably be okay. So for example, this mashed turnips recipe. No, it doesn't list it anywhere in the list of recipes. However, if you look back, it is in the, I think maybe the 9th, the very beginning of the cookbook, it is listed as a recipe in there. Why is that, I guess, so frustrating? And I guess I shouldn't say it's so frustrating. It's just that in other recipes, like next week's or a few weeks ago, there are menu items listed on the recipe page, but it tells you this recipe is on page 19, or this recipe is on week 22. So very inconsistent in the way that they're listing them. And then sometimes the recipes aren't listed at all. And also, as we've seen in a few others, sometimes there are recipes listed on that menu page for the day, but they aren't listed as items that were on the menu. So for example, last week we had stuffed dates on the recipe page, but not on the menu. And we had just had stuffed dates a couple weeks ago and tried them then. So just very inconsistent editing. And maybe that is normal. If anybody has other cookbooks from that time period, the early to mid 20s, right pre-Great Depression, is that pretty normal? Is that something they did, or did it just happen to be bad editing in this cookbook in particular? If it was bad editing, I would find that a little bit ironic, because this series of cookbooks was put out by a very popular magazine at the time, and you would think that their editing would be superior to maybe just any other cookbook that was put out by someone or a group that didn't have a lot of editing skills going on at that time. It's time to try everything. Everything looks and smells so good. We're gonna start with the soup. And after looking over the recipe, I am a little bit disappointed, I suppose, that the corn wasn't included. So it had to strain everything and then thicken the liquid afterward. When I saw the soup initially, I pictured eating it with the corn in there already. And so what I've actually done is just set the corn aside, and probably what I'll do after this meal is just put the corn right back in there, maybe add some of that chicken that came off of the bones when we made the stock for this, and I might just kind of bump that up and make it a little bit of a heartier soup, but that's for later. And so let's see how it is as they wrote it in the recipe. It certainly smells like corn. It smells really good, very sweet. And we have some parsley there on top. It's really tasty like this. The broth is really nice. You can definitely taste that corn, and it's like a nice, that milk has that nice creamy, milky, and then in addition to that corn taste, it's really nice. It's pretty mild, but it's definitely a nice start to a meal. I certainly think if I had the extra corn and some of that chicken and other stuff in here, I'd like it more. But just like this on its own, it's pretty delicious. Next is our chicken croquettes. And while I was crushing up the crackers for the cracker crumbs dust for the coating on this, at first I was really trying to get it nice and fine, but some of it was left a little bit chunkier. And looking them over now, I really am glad it was left chunkier like that, because looking at them, the texture of those thicker pieces of cracker, I think really looks very nice. It smells really good. Excited to try this. Now, when I made them, it calls for a deep fry and preferably in a frying basket. I ended up doing more of like almost a saute, or in between, maybe just like a light fry instead of a deep fry. So we kind of did it all 4 sides instead of all down at once. I'm not sure if that would make a difference if you were to try this at home and do a deep fry on it or not, but that's just how it ended up being in my kitchen. Yeah, it smells good. It's really tasty. The difference in the crunch on the outside compared to the softness on the inside is really nice. And as I'm eating this, and I know earlier I had talked about that Russian dressing, I feel like that would be really, really good to dip this in. So hold on one second. I'm going to go get some of that. We made a little extra. It was so good. So I'm going to go get a little bit of that and see what it tastes like with this. I know it's not on the menu, but everybody was using leftovers back then, just like we do now. So hold on. I know this is not how they intended it in the 1920s, but this is how we're going to try it. Kind of reminds me of being a kid and dipping my nuggets in some sauce or something, but let's see how it is. Yep, that was definitely the right move. Next up is our mashed turnips. We ended up doing those in place of the mashed potatoes. It gave us 2 separate options, and instead of making both, I just went with the turnips this time. It smells very nice. It definitely smells strong of turnip. Let's see how it turned out. It's really good. It has that almost bitter, pungent kind of flavor, reminiscent of maybe a radish, a very mild radish, or a very, very, very mild horseradish, something like that. If that's up your alley, this is delicious. Normally next would come the date muffins, but we tried those yesterday and determined, at least to me, they definitely were more of a biscuit than a muffin, but they were fabulous. So now we're going to move on to this salad with our cucumber dressing. The dressing is definitely thinned out, and it has a very, very strong scent of vinegar, which I really like a lot in my dressings. As I was cooking it up together, I thought it kind of was reminiscent of a mayonnaise, and I was not really super looking forward to it, as if this is not your first time, you know the history there. But after it was thinned out a little bit, the cucumbers were added, you could smell it. It definitely seems like it's more of my taste than maybe what I initially thought it was going to be like. You can see there's all these chunks here of the cucumber, and the sauce is just kind of covering, dripping over all of them. Let's see how it tastes. It definitely smells really good. Now you can smell the cucumber in there along with that vinegar. It's very pleasant. And let's see how the dressing and the tomatoes with the skins off ended up being. Actually, I'm going to try just this cucumber first. Okay, wow. The vinegar is a little overpowering. I added exactly, if I'm recalling right, I made it exactly how they asked. And I added apple cider vinegar. It just said vinegar. I added apple cider. Maybe it would be different with a different kind of vinegar, but with the apple cider vinegar in here, it is definitely kind of a punch in your face of vinegar. I like that kind of thing. If you are looking at maybe a boiled dressing to be a little more creamy, this might not be your thing, but let's try it with the tomato. Yeah, that's a lot of acid in this here. Even with that heavy cream, it doesn't take the acid down much, which again, I really prefer. That's definitely my kind of flavor. But if it's not and you're looking for something a little creamier and a little toned down, this would not be for you. But I think it's fabulous. I don't notice a giant difference with the skins off. If I was making this again at home, I probably wouldn't go through the effort to blanch those and peel them, but eating it right now, it's not unpleasant at all. And for our dessert, as some of you have requested, I did get myself a cup of coffee to drink with this. Now, normally I have my coffee with a little bit of milk and a little bit of creamer. I don't think back in the 1920s they would have been using International Delight Almond Joy creamer. So I decided they probably would have had it black, and I am not at that level of coffee drinker. Or they would have had it with a little bit of cream and sugar. So I put a little bit of cream, a little bit of sugar in here, and that's how I'm taking my coffee for this dessert. The dessert is what I was really most looking forward to in this meal outside of the turnips. And unfortunately, I don't think it's going to turn out. As I was checking on the molds, it seems like it's not set in there. We did this yesterday. It's been in there about 24 hours at this point. So it's not going to get any more firm. And with those little molds I use, that little ducky mold, I was so looking forward to seeing the shape of a little ducky in chocolate walnut pudding. But we're gonna flip them over and see if there's any thickness to them or if it just turns out to be kind of gloop. And if that's the case, I guess we'll have some cocoa for dessert. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. Well, let's just start with our cute little ducky because I don't think both will fit at the same time. Okay, ready, set, and oh, no. Well, there's our answer. I didn't even get it fully flipped before it just mud puddled. Sad little duck in a mud puddle. I guess let's see how it tastes at least. Well, maybe the difference here in this cold soupy chocolate and this warm coffee will be nice, but it smells really good. It tastes delicious. It tastes just like chocolate pudding, only a little bit better, which is probably because it's homemade chocolate pudding. Yeah, overall, disappointing in texture and in appearance, but still delicious in flavor. If you're looking for a recipe for a delicious cold chocolate soup with nuts, I'd say this is the recipe for you. Should we do a Beauty and the Beast moment? That's good. That's really tasty. Overall, I'm really happy with how dinner turned out today. Although some things were not as I was expecting them to be, everything turned out delicious. I don't think there was anything that I was super disappointed in the flavor of. If you liked what you saw today, consider liking and subscribing so that you can continue to see more of the dinners that I put out here. Next week's dinner, the start of October, is going to be a bit of a doozy. There are several recipes that you may think of when you think of retro recipes and some of those weird things that we don't see today, including a candle salad and a spinach mold. I'll see you next week with that. Oh, I forgot to sip my coffee. It's pretty good. What do you think the pudding would taste like in the coffee as a creamer? Let's try it. Actually, don't really taste a difference.